The following was a live study session recorded and shared to help anyone who is studying for the Salesforce admin certification. This was just 1 out of 10 recorded sessions, so make sure to check out the playlist, which I will link in the description. The structure of these videos follow the modules and lessons from my Salesforce admin course, which I often reference in these study sessions. But these sessions should still be helpful regardless of whether you are taking that course or not. If you do want to check out my course, follow the link in the description and submit your email, and I will email you a discount code to the Comprehensive Salesforce Admin Certification Prep course. This session is about development lifecycle, productivity, chatter, and importing and exporting. This combines both Module 12 and 13 in my course. All right, today we are going to look at both Module 12 and Module 13. So let me pull up my screen here and we can get rolling. All right, so we're going to talk about the development lifecycle. Hopefully both of these modules made sense, Gary, and you were able to work through them. I know they were both pretty short, so probably not too difficult, things you might be familiar with already. So we'll get through this, and then we will also talk about productivity, mobile app, global actions a little bit, as well as import and export functionalities. Talking about the development lifecycle, I think we had 3 or 4 lessons in this module in the course. So we'll talk about sandboxes, change sets, Salesforce releases, and then release best practices. Before I dive into any of these, were you familiar with these terms? I assume you were. You've kind of heard of these.
I work in Sandboxes daily. Yeah.
All right, so this is nothing new. We won't spend a whole lot of time then since you're familiar with these, but we'll review each one of them real quick. So sandboxes, do you feel like you know the 4 different types of sandboxes pretty well? Yep. So developer, developer pro, partial sandbox, full sandbox. I'll put you on the spot. Which ones contain copies of the data from the production org? Do you remember?
Oh, so I know the full sandbox is like a direct copy, right?
Full copy,
Full
all
everything.
the data.
I know the developer org, I believe, contains metadata, right? But not the full deal.
Exactly.
Partial, let's see, because we use partial. I feel like it has some, but like not all. I mean,
exactly.
Yeah.
Partial, it's in the name, right?
Yeah,
so
right.
It has it's a partial copy of your production org.
Yep.
So all of those sandboxes have all of the metadata, right? The page layouts, the custom fields, custom objects, all of that metadata copied. But only the full sandbox has a full copy of all of the data, so the actual records in the Salesforce org. And partial, you get to choose which objects when you create a partial sandbox. So you could have multiple partial sandboxes with different sets of objects data that you're pulling from production when you create that. One of the reasons you might use a partial sandbox instead of a full sandbox would be full sandboxes there's a longer refresh period. So I don't remember off the top of my head, it might be a week, something like that for a full sandbox. So you create one, you can't refresh it to bring in new data for another week. Whereas with partial, you should be able to reset it a little quicker. I forget what the actual days are. Actually, let's just look it up together so we get this right. So Salesforce sandbox refresh times. Partial copy every 5 days. Full every 30 days.
30. Yeah, okay.
So
that's what I thought I remembered.
Yeah. That's definitely different than a week, right? So every 29 days or every 30 days, and then every 5 days for partial. Developer sandboxes are a lot quicker. I think it might be 24 hours for a developer and a little bit longer for a developer pro. Again, if this is important information to anyone watching, look it up. But that's a difference in those sandboxes as well, and why you would use one versus the other. And when you push changes from, a developer sandbox to a full sandbox, you would do that to test in an actual environment, right? It's A full copy is basically everything that you'd see in production. So you want to make those changes, push to that full sandbox or partial, and test everything before you push it to production. And that's why you would kind of use those different types of sandboxes along the way. You can also create more developer sandboxes than you can partial and full sandboxes. Depending upon your edition, you get different limits for each type. But if you're in a big organization, you might have 10 to 20 different developers and consultants or business analysts kind of working in their own environments, and then all of them push to one or two different full or partial sandboxes for kind of user acceptance testing before it goes to production. And that takes us to talking about change sets, right? So a change set is something that you can put your changes into, right? Change set. You kind of add changes that you make in a sandbox into a change set. So those are metadata components that you add to a change set. And then you can push all of those changes into another sandbox or to your production org all at one time. So you could have, in one sandbox, you could be working on two different solutions, right? You could be working on something for opportunities, and then someone else might be working on something for cases, or you might be doing both. But you could create a change set for each one of those solutions individually so that you're only pushing a certain thing to another environment. And that's kind of how you can break that down. Actually, we can't look at that in the developer edition org. I forgot. So I'm not going to do that right now. What you would do is you create a change set in a sandbox, and then you click on add component, and then you have a huge pick list of different types of components you can add. So a flow would be one thing that you can add to a change set. A custom field would be another thing. A page layout would be another thing. So once you select that item, then you get a full list of all of those page layouts or all of the custom fields. And then you can add those individually to a change set and push it. One other thing I'll say before we move on from that is when you go to deploy this, you would upload it to another sandbox or to production, and then you'd go to that other environment, log in, find the change set, and then deploy. So it's kind of a multi-step process. And it can be frustrating because you might have 30 items in that change set and one of them fails. There's an error on one of them, so the whole change set fails. You have to troubleshoot it, figure out what's going on, upload it again, deploy it again, and hopefully it works. But the point is, if one thing fails, the whole change set fails.
Yep.
Salesforce releases. Gary, I think you might know this, but I'll put you on the spot again. How many major releases does Salesforce have a year for the platform? Do you remember?
So, yes, because I think major releases. Because we have two as a company. We typically do fall and spring, but I'm wondering now, does Salesforce have more? Do they do a summer as well?
Yep. So
Yep.
there's 3 releases a year.
Yep. Okay.
We call them seasonal releases because they have kind of those names. And it's actually winter, spring, and summer.
Okay, got it. So nothing in the fall.
Well, the thing is, it's confusing because it kind of happens at the end of the season. So the winter release actually happens in February. The spring release, I think, typically happens in June. And then the summer release happens in October, I believe.
Okay, got it.
So the timing of it might not be what you'd expect, but it's called the winter release, the spring release, and the summer release.
Yep.
3 a year. And there's typically a lot that's packed into each of those.
Yep.
So then my next question would be, and I'll answer this myself so I don't put you on the spot, but what is the best way to prepare for a Salesforce release? And the 2 things that I would say is, 1, the release notes. So Salesforce has release notes for each release that they have. It can be hard to navigate because there's so much packed into it, so many different links, places that you can dive further, go to different pages and learn more. But then they also have a trailhead module for each release, which is maybe a little bit more digestible for a lot of people. to go on the trailhead, work through that module, and get the most important highlights of what's happening on the release. So definitely something if you, I know you're in a project manager type of role, Gary, but for those who are in like an admin type of role, are in charge of the Salesforce org for their company, making sure that you know what is coming in the release is very important, because some things will change automatically the day you wake up and the release has happened. There may be some things that are different in the org, and if you don't prepare users, that's not a good deal. People might be confused, asking where things went, why things are different. But then also it's worth noting that some things will then be available in setup that you can enable as well.
Yep.
So some things happen automatically, some things will just be there that you can turn on when you're ready for it as well. And then release best practices. What I wanted to touch on here is just that typically it's best within a Salesforce environment or at a company to have a regular rhythm to when you make updates, right? So, and that's just generally speaking, that's the point with this section. It could be every week, it could be every other week or monthly, whatever it looks like. It's good to have a rhythm at your company of when these changes happen. So obviously we have the 3 Salesforce releases, but then you have internal things that you're building and working on all the time as well. And to package those up into a regular cadence when you release it is a best practice, and that way you can prepare users. They know that something might be coming on a certain day every month or every week, and then they know to kind of look out for that and to be able to follow up with you if they have questions about something. And then a part of that again is don't make changes directly into production, except in certain situations. So if you ever have the question, should I do it in a sandbox first or should I do it in production? The default should be sandbox.
Yep.
There might be certain situations where it's a hot fix. You just need to fix something right away, or it's going to continue to be a problem and data's being messed up because of it, something like that. But other than that, it's best to do it in a sandbox, test it, and then bring it into the production environment. I'm sure you know that as well in your role. So as we get into the last module, module 13 of this course, we talk about productivity, Chatter, mobile app, global actions, and some more things. Do you use Chatter in your current role, Gary?
All the time.
Okay.
Yep.
So again, something that you are familiar with. I don't think that there's much to know as an admin that you don't already know as a user, really, except for the permission that people need to be able to use Chatter. So there's an enable Chatter permission that you could add to their profile or to a permission set so that they can use Chatter. And as you know, it's an internal communication tool, right? It's a collaboration tool. Can you tell me kind of the different places that you can post to Chatter? I'm thinking of 2 or 3 different scenarios specifically.
Different places you can post to Chatter?
Yeah,
I
it's a
know.
tricky question.
Yeah, it is, because like I know when my home screen, like there's a Chatter tab, right?
Exactly,
I can
yep.
go there and I
So that's
can
one
view,
place.
one place in a particular, like a specific object,
Exactly, yep.
right? Then I'm trying to think of another place. I feel like I'm missing something.
No, those are the 2 primary that I'm looking
Okay.
for. The last one that I would add that I don't think I mentioned in the course was groups.
Oh yeah,
And I don't know if
right.
you have groups where you're at, but Chatter
Previously.
groups. Yeah, okay.
Okay.
So Chatter groups would be another place that you would post to. So general Chatter feed, or on a record page, or in a Chatter group. And depending upon where you post, it will show up to different people based upon where they're at, right? So if you post in kind of just the general Chatter feed on the Chatter tab, people will see it if they follow you, or it might pop up in their kind of company highlights feed, but they're not guaranteed to see that unless they follow you or they go to your user record and then they
Or
can
if I
see
at
everything that,
mention them.
or if you at mention them, right? Yep. And then
Yeah.
they'll get a notification as well about that. If you post on a record, people generally aren't going to see that unless they go to the record and they're kind of looking at that record, trying to figure out the details of it. They might open Chatter, look through the feed to see what's happened, what the communication has been, or if you at them, if you tag them, again, like you said, then they'll be able to see that and get that notification. What can you do besides post?
You can do polls. Um, I know this is related to posts, but like I find it cool that you can like attach documents. Um, Trying to think, what else? I'm trying to, that's the more majority of what I do. I may do a poll. I
Oh,
may do, yeah,
just a
attach
regular
stuff.
post, yeah.
Yeah, just regular post. Yeah. So I know you showed some more stuff in there, but
Yeah, no, I think for
yeah.
the exam, they're pretty general. Yeah, general about what you need to know, and they say you need to know the Chatter capabilities. Well,
Yes.
what does that mean? The way that I take that is I think you should know that you can post, you can
Mhm.
create a poll, or you can create a question.
Yeah.
And typically, I mean, you can ask questions in a regular post or a poll as well, so that's a little confusing. But what the question functionality lets you do is you have like this question text box, and then you have details as a separate text box. And then when people answer the question, you can kind of select the best answer. So then in the future, when people come across that again, maybe it's has to do with something about your role
Hmm.
or something like that, where people might look that question up again and find the answer to that, or the way that you kind of handle certain situations at your company. So
Yes.
post, question, poll, and then like you said, you can add files, you can add pictures, you can link to things, you can format the text, and you can post in different places.
Yes.
I think those are the things you should know about Chatter. The last thing I would say is with Chatter groups, they can be public or private,
Yeah.
meaning if it's private, only the members of the group will be able to see the posts, but anyone will still be able to see that the group exists.
Yes.
If it's an unlisted group, then only the people in the group or the owner of the group will be able to even see the group itself.
Got it.
So, I mean, that, the CEO might have a leadership team group or acquisition team.
Hmm.
They don't want to know that there's acquisition talks going on, and they have this unlisted group so that no one else in the company can see that group exists.
Got it.
Mobile app, how can you customize mobile page layouts? So we'd go to the Lightning Record page, right? And we can edit the page to add different things to it, but then activate it for just the mobile device. So
Yes.
this is the way I would recommend doing it, is to have a desktop version of the page and a mobile version of the page so that you can customize it in a specific way for any users that are out in the field. And then you can change the navigation. So if we go to setup, we type in mobile, we have branding that we can change, and then we have the navigation that we can change. And so when people at the bottom of their app hit the menu button, these are the items that they would see and have access to, basically like tabs. Outside of that, I don't think you need to know a whole lot more about the mobile app. Global actions. So global actions can be used in multiple places. I think this is kind of confusing too, so I'll talk about this briefly and show this. But when we are on let's just go to the home page here. When we are on any page in Salesforce, we should see this quick actions button, the plus button. So from here, I have a list of things that I can do really quick from wherever I'm at in Salesforce, and they're not going to pre-populate a record for me, right? So if I do this right here and I say new task, it's not assigning any related records for me. But if I go to a lead
Hmm.
and I want to create a new task,
Yeah. It
now
creates.
that's attaching it to that person for me. But I could
Got
still
it.
go up here and do new task as well. And you can see how it doesn't add that related to thing for me, right?
Got
So
it.
The global action is like a global thing that's happening. It's not within the context of the page that you're on.
Got it.
And that's one thing that's different there. If I go here, we can also sometimes see global actions that get included in our button list. So global actions can show up here, or they can show up as other actions on the page. And what I want to show really quick, just to make this more evident, if we type in actions in our setup search and then find global actions, we see all of the global actions that exist already. I just created one. So just to show that, I went to new action. I want to create record type of action. And then I choose what I want to create, right? So let's just say it was an order, new order, save. And then I get to choose the fields that I want to be a part of this action. So maybe if it's a quick action, I'm saying, hey, I just want to include the 4 most important fields. And then I'll get back to it later to fill out more details. So maybe that's the case here. We'll click save. So now this action exists, but I haven't added it to any place for a user to use. So if I go to Object Manager and I go to Account and then Page Layout, and then I navigate to the Mobile and Lightning Actions list, I should see that action I just created, and I can add it to this section, the Salesforce Mobile and Lightning Experience Actions.
Awesome.
And then I can click Save, and now it should show up on the account records for me when I open an account record. Sometimes it takes a minute, so we'll see. Yep, here it is.
There it is. Okay.
So we have that. One thing that can be nice about that is if we go back to quick actions really quick, or global actions, and I look at the new order again, I can add predefined field values. So from here I could say, hey, for this quick action, I always want the order owner to be this person, or I always want the status to default to this value. So then when they go to create it, you can pre-populate some of those fields for the action when someone uses it.
Very cool.
The last place that you would add it is to the global publisher layout, which can be different for different profiles. So if I edit, you can see the different profiles, and I could have a different global layout for each profile. But if I edit this, add that new action down here, and click save, now when I go back or refresh this a couple times to hope that it updates, if I click on that plus button, we have new order there.
Got it. Okay.
The global action can show up in 2 different places. Primarily, when I think of global actions, I just think of this plus button, but I did want to point out that those also can be added into the record pages. And then last but not least, import and export. Do you do much importing or exporting, Gary?
I really don't. We have a specialized group that typically handles like document import, document export. So I really don't touch it too much.
Yeah. You know that it happens, but outside of that, yeah.
Yep.
So I'd say just in general to know as an admin, but also for the exam specifically, it might be important to know the difference between the data import wizard and data loader. Which are 2 different things. So data import wizard is something that you can get to inside of Salesforce, right? If I go to setup, type in wizard, data import wizard is something that I can use to import or update records in Salesforce. And it's pretty easy. You have this point and click functionality, right? We would choose an object. So we have some standard objects and our custom objects. And then we choose some different values. Do we want to add or update? And then we can choose how they match in Salesforce. And then we add the file. And then after that screen, we would map up the fields, right? So this column in the spreadsheet goes to this field in Salesforce. And that's what the next screen would be. If we click on standard objects again, you'll notice we don't see opportunities. We don't see cases. There's actually more than that, but those are the 2 big ones that we don't see.
Right.
And so that's one of the differences here that I want to point out is cases and opportunities. You can't use data import wizard for. You could use data loader for.
For pretty much anything.
Yep. Additionally, what I'll point out is we went to inside of Salesforce to use Data Import Wizard. Data Loader is something that's an external tool, right? So we'd have to download it as its own software app, launch it on our local device, and then connect to the Salesforce org to be able to import or export. So that's the difference there. That's the location difference, right? One is in Salesforce, one is external. Data Import Wizard can't do cases and opportunities, but Data Loader can. Data Loader can delete and export as well, but Data Import Wizard can't delete or export, right? It's only importing or updating. And then the other big difference that I'll point out, I don't know if this will be on the exam, but it could be 50,000 records is the limit for Data Import Wizard. So if you have 51 leads that you're wanting to import, there's only one of these two solutions that will work. I think
that's at one time, right?
At one time.
Yeah. Okay.
Yep. Exactly. One CSV file with that many rows in it.
Got it.
Data Loader, I think, can go from all the way up to 5 million rows for a specific import. So 50 to 5 million or less than 50. And those are the big differences I think you need to know for that. We talked about the export functionality already before in Salesforce, right? So you can export using data export here in Salesforce as well, but that's not the Data Import Wizard. That's a different tool. We can export now, or we can schedule it. I think that's a good recap. I know that we went through some of these fast, but I kind of saved some of these miscellaneous items for the end of the course because they're not as in-depth, not as important. They are important, but not as important. So I think that's the end of this module, the end of the course. As always, Gary, if there are any questions that you have, follow up with me. I'll try to reach out to you next week and have the test practice exams up for you as well.
Okay, perfect. I appreciate you, man.
Yep,
Thoroughly enjoyed this.
All right, I'll see you, Gary.
All right, see you, man.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks for watching. Hopefully you got something out of this session. Make sure to check out the playlist for the next video in the series. If you want to check out my comprehensive course, click the link in the description. Make sure to subscribe for more Salesforce content to help you on your Salesforce journey. And please like the video because that helps me out.